Welcome back to CADA Lunch and Learn. We
Welcome.
have three speakers today, which is always exciting. Dan and Sarah, as you know, and welcoming our first guest of 2024, retail and customer expert, Richard Hammond, CEO and co-founder of Uncrowd. Just a little housekeeping. We'll all be muted to avoid any background noise, and I would encourage all of you to put your questions into the chat and we'll run through them later. We'll have a little Q&A. This month, we're looking at loyalty and whether it exists. So without any haste, I'm going to hand over to Sarah to kick things off.
Thanks, Meha. Thanks for introducing everything today. And thanks, everyone, for joining us. It's really good to see you in January. So we're going to look today with Richard as our guest at what loyalty means to customers and to operators, retailers and hospitality. We're going to look at what happens when loyalty programs go wrong and what the risks of a loyalty program can be. And we're also going to look at what other ways retailers and operators have to keep customers spending with them. So I think we'll kick off with what the meaning of what the meaning of loyalty is in retail in 2024. Richard, I'd like to start with you if possible and then hand over to you, Dan.
Sure. So obviously we talked a lot about this ourselves over the last couple of weeks because we wanted to make sure that we kind of put loyalty into a context that all of us as operators and marketers and retailers can get some value from. And the first thing I think is really, really important is that we understand what loyalty has come to mean and what it really means. Those are two very different things. So, for example, we've used a very deliberately kind of clickbaity title, Loyalty Doesn't Exist.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But actually, when we look at things like retail, and I know Dan agrees very strongly with this, it's very rare that a person is genuinely loyal to a retailer. But we're often extremely loyal to a brand, and there's great examples of that throughout history. I've seen people, admittedly in the tech team, but I've seen people physically come to blows over Apple versus Windows, or even Apple versus Samsung. So I'm sure Samsung would be delighted to now be elevated above Windows in that argument. But where you buy that from, actually, somebody will buy their iPhone from Target very happily. They'll buy it from the iPhone store. They'll buy it from Best Buy. The retailer hasn't got that same leverage of loyalty that a brand has. And of course, brands have spent a huge amount of money establishing that loyalty. So can customers truly be loyal to a retailer? Well, we'll dive into that in depth in a minute or two. But actually, with very few exceptions, retailers they win our patronage by things that are not automatically granted, which is the biggest problem with the idea of thinking of loyalty as a customer is loyal to us as a retailer. When we start to think like that, we stop working hard enough.
Yeah, and I think the provocative title, and to build on what you were just saying, Richard, is that if you I think retailers win our patronage by being good enough and being in the right place a lot of the time. And I think that sounds, I know it sounds a bit ridiculous or a bit simplistic, but given over the last 20 years the amount of money, effort, and energy that has been expended in creating huge loyalty schemes, particularly I'm looking at grocery here. And I get why they're worth doing, and I get why the retailers are persisting with them, and I get why you can see the results in sales, because actually there's a huge amount of data gathering around better understanding of customers, of their habits, of the power that Tesco managed to engender and the focus that they got from turning the club card a year and a half, 2 years ago into something that was very price driven, which really hit the value button very hard. And that made people sit up and think, well, actually, maybe it is, I've got bored of having all these stupid pretend credit cards in my wallet, which I don't use anymore because I've got a phone and I want to do everything on my phone. But actually, there's a tangible value that is worth me signing up to this scheme, and all of the data that I'm going to give this retailer is worth parting with, because I can see that I'm saving on a £20 shop, I might be saving £3 or £4. So there's some really tangible benefits. But really, what that's doing is recognising where the discounters have moved the market, and that price is the paramount and the first place that customers will go, and that then you've got to play price first in order for the other elements of what retailers want to talk to customers about to be heard at all.
And isn't that point you just made about data the real critical change here? That I was in a bar in Cincinnati last week, and I overheard two old boys we're all sitting at the bar, addressing the bar as this correct terminology, and two old boys talking about, I think they were either talking about Kroger or it might have been Food Line, but anyway. And they were talking about how they didn't want to participate in the data scheme, not the loyalty scheme, well, they call members program, not the member program, but the data scheme. And customers, in bars in Cincinnati are perhaps the equivalent of the man on the Clapham omnibus. We're getting wise to the fact that our data has value and that our data is what's really being swapped for those offers in those schemes. I think the stereotype of the blind customer aren't Tesco's and Sainsbury's good to me because they give me these vouchers that they know I buy sausages 3 times a week, and look, I've got an offer on sausages. That's marvelous. We're getting wise to the fact that actually that's not free. That's in exchange for something we're told by our bank is valuable. We're told in adverts on televisions, the multiple monitors we've all got in our front rooms, like in that creepy film Sliver. We're being told that our data has value. And so responding to that as a retailer and as a scheme operator, that starts to get interesting. That starts to get interesting if you think maybe we move on from being a loyalty provider or a loyalty scheme to being an exchange scheme, an exchange of data, an exchange of value.
And this is something that actually I don't know if anyone's seen the news, but in November, the Competition and Markets Authority announced that it's actually just started. They've launched an investigation into the retailers' loyalty schemes. And what they're looking at is, one of the things is, do certain customers face an unfair barrier to taking part, to benefiting from the member pricing, the preferential pricing, the 2-tier pricing, whatever we want to call it, because either they're not willing to share their data or because they don't have a smartphone, so they're not able to take part in this. It's quite an interesting investigation. I haven't managed to find out when they're going to be reporting. They were very cagey about it in the press office. They wouldn't say when they would be reporting, and they wouldn't say what the force of any recommendations would be. Does it imply that, a legal change for retailers? But they're going to be looking at the extent that price promotions are only available to people who sign up for loyalty cards. They're going to look at whether loyalty cards are to the benefit or the detriment of the majority of customers. They're going to look at whether they're reducing the amount of competition in the market. Are consumers being misled? So is the member price, a genuine saving or not? Or is it artificially creating a 2-tier system? So it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out and what the impact will be on supermarkets' loyalty schemes and not just supermarkets, actually, hospitality operators as well.
Stuart Machin at Marks and Spencer's, it seemed to be almost a sub-paragraph in their recent reporting, fabulous numbers that the business has reported, dropping their test of Sparks prices. And I applaud that. I think it's a good thing. It really worries me when you start to see that exclusionary tactic. And it worries me on all sorts of counts. One, it made me I was about to swear then, not allowed to swear on this webinar. It made me get a club card at Christmas to get sides of salmon because that's the kind of family we are. But it was £24, the salmon, and you got it for £12. And then Sarah and I talked about this, and she said, I had the same deal at Sainsbury's. It was £24 and then it was £12. Then I talked to somebody else who'd seen it in a third retailer, £24, but then it was £12. That's treating customers like idiots. That's making us feel and look foolish. Initially, we get that lovely feeling of a bargain, but then you talk to everybody else and it turns out you didn't get a bargain at all. What you got was the actual price for that product. That generates the opposite of goodwill. I don't know what the opposite of goodwill is, but it generates what that is. And eventually that piles up. And I think it's very clever of Stuart to have made the decision to almost go against the data and say, well, I understand the sales gain I'm making, but I want to put another dimension on that to see whether or not the loss of goodwill is worth more to me than the gain in sales. Now, it feels like a game that has an ultimate kind of stop, that there'll come a point where everybody gets together, recognizes that all they're doing is stripping away each other's profit margin, increasing their cost of sales, and it becomes we're all back to square one.
Yeah, and I think, I have a lot of sympathy with the grocery market and what they're having, from a sales point of view, to having to address it. We've said right at the top, if you don't address price first and front and center, then you're going to lose customers to the discounters who are doing that better than you and have been doing that better than everybody across Europe for 20, 30, 40 years. So we know what's coming. And I think in the UK, we can see that the mainstream retailers are fighting back as well as they can. M&S is super interesting, one, because they're doing brilliantly and have been for the last 3 or 4 years. And so it's a great story, but also because M&S and Waitrose, to be fair to Waitrose, they are both brands where if you are loyal to them, you really are, because as a customer, you make a positive choice to spend more money than you would do otherwise elsewhere, because you believe that the quality and the range and the shopping experience perhaps is worth that extra money. And so there is definitely the loyalty is not dead, because people, if you're going there, you're not purely price driven. You're driven by other factors. And I think that's fascinating, because M&S have understood that really well, and that's why they are doing such a great job at the moment. And it's also why Waitrose. I was looking at a presentation yesterday that we had done for an Irish client in 2012, and our case study, our best-in-class case study, was about Waitrose. And I look back to what Waitrose were doing 12 years ago, and this is making me want to swear now. And I thought, what has happened in these last 12 years for Waitrose to lose their way so badly? But that's what they were doing. They came out of the financial crash in 2008. They launched their essentials range really quickly to make sure that the hygiene of price and of value was dealt with. But they knew that they weren't going to compete with the rest of the grocers. And they generated loyalty through quality, through range, through shopping environment, through choice and tone of voice. And that's what M&S are doing now. I don't understand why Waitrose can't get it right at the moment, but I really hope they do. But yeah, I suppose my point there, rambling, is that there is loyalty in that sector, that higher sector of the UK market. And I suspect for exactly the same sort of reasons, there's loyalty to Aldi and Lidl by dint of their pricing being so good, and then them working so hard on range, quality and choice on top of that as well.
Does it come down to, sorry, Richard, I'll just quickly, just something Dan's picked up on. What you're talking about there are some really strong propositions, whether it's Marks and Spencer, Waitrose, as the case study 12 years ago, or Aldi and Lidl, which offer that certain level of quality, that reliable level of quality and variety at a consistently low price. That means you don't need to check what anyone else is selling it for, because you're pretty certain that you're getting the best price.
Yeah.
So if a retailer has a good enough proposition, a strong enough proposition, irrespective of which market position it's at, is that enough to buy a consistent customer effectively? So is a consistent customer a loyal customer? Is it the same thing? Are we in semantic territory now?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, if you talk to customers, you get one view of why they behave the way they do. And if you observe their behaviors, you get a totally different picture. So if you talk to customers and you say, what drives you to make your choices? People talk about price and choice, always number two. Well, price is obviously, nobody asks for things to be more expensive necessarily. And choice is actually about where we fail to put the right thing in front of a customer. It's not generally more choice that we want, although choice has become a synonym for freedom. And who would argue against freedom, for example? So you come back down to those basics of, if that was the price differential, and I know we talk about grocery a lot, but it's a good marketplace to bring learnings from. If that's the price bracket that most grocery has existed in for the last 10 years, it was there 5 years ago, where you've got Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's, Tesco's and Sainsbury's, Morrison's and Asda, and Aldi and Lidl. And what's happened now is that's gone like this. It's compressed, and that's some fabulous work on the part of Tesco and Sainsbury's. It's also been some extraordinary work by Marks and Spencer's and Waitrose to create value propositions. Waitrose, we've in our work, we've observed that if you look at Waitrose as a customer experience now, actually that's gone a little bit far. The value proposition has overwhelmed any sense of premium and special. And that's not good for Waitrose, because that store already exists. and Waitrose can't compete with that store that will exist. But that narrowing of pricing means that loyalty as a concept is less about being able to keep somebody loyal because of price absolute, but the way you handle price. And you mentioned it just then, that one of the things that Aldi do so well is Aldi's, and it sounds almost crass to say it, but Aldi's proposition is, we will be the lowest price we possibly can be for whatever you buy from us. Mm-hmm. And that's different to Sainsbury's and Tesco saying, we will be the lowest price if you join in. If you agree to relent to participate and do something extra, if we put a barrier in front of you, then you can have our best prices. Whereas Aldi, I think, probably do generate a significant charge of preference. I'm going to call it preference rather than loyalty, because the customer knows they're on my side. The thing I buy all the time, I need all the time, I get for the best price they can sell it to me for. At the same time, Aldi have done incredible work. Sounds like I'm an Aldi spokesman here, but I'm not at all. Love the brand, but can't crack them. Unlike you guys, so I think they are one of your clients.
Yeah. We'll be studiously neutral on this particular point. Carry on.
But that product quality, the blind testing, Lidl benefit from this as well. Although Lidl's packaging is just awful, and that's not an opinion, that's an observed thing in store. Unfortunately, their premium range looks like they've taken Aldi's premium range. It's a bit like if Aldi have photocopied Finest, well, Lidl have then photocopied Specially Select, and what you've got in the end there is something that is a little bit down. But actually, a comment from Richard in the audience there has said that Aldi's effectively appropriated Tesco's Every Little Helps, and you are absolutely bang on. I think it's a really good summary that Tesco has spent all the money on that, and Aldi are reaping the loyalty benefit if it exists.
In the same way, perhaps, according to your Slaying It report, Richard, Sainsbury's benefited from Tesco having done all the work over the years with Clubcard and with the idea of member pricing and this differential, and then steamed in with Nectar prices. And everyone instantly understood, and I'm not a Sainsbury's customer, I can't remember the last time I went to Sainsbury's, it's not near me, it's not convenient for me, etc. Steamed in with Nectar prices, and I instantly understand, I know what a Nectar price is. It means if I've got a Nectar card, I get the better price. And they just benefited from all of that lovely groundwork that Tesco must have done. That must have been quite
possibly annoying. Also benefited from the fact that Tesco's had to face the irony of people saying, well, how dare you exclude me from buying that just because I've not got your stupid card. Whereas stupid being a personal opinion, it's not stupid. Clubcard is incredible. It's phenomenal. I would be an absolute fool to say anything other than that. It's one of the great victories of retailing in the last 50 years. But the customer, the man on the Clapham omnibus, the guy that's sitting at Cincinnati bar, who has no idea what Tesco's is, Tesco's they went through as the pioneers, as they often do actually in many things. Yeah. Sainsbury's almost have a chance to say, well, we didn't want to, but you've seen what's happening down the road, so we've got to. Oh, ever so sorry. I would if I could. And that might actually have a positive impact on them. We're speculating, but I can imagine.
Yeah, you could, but you could also speculate, or I'm going to speculate the alternative, which is that could Sainsbury's choose to take the moral high ground, or just simply copy Aldi rather than Tesco, and say, do you know what, Tesco's are making you get that silly card and all that nonsense. What we're going to do is we're just going to hold these prices down for everybody. We don't want your data. We don't want the cost of managing your data. We don't know what to do with your data. We're going to be overwhelmed by it. What we're actually going to do is we're going to make sure that we're delivering everyday low price. And I think there is an option there for outside, not just UK, but for a mainstream retailer in a competitive market such as the one we're discussing, to actually say, I'm going to wash my hands of all of this. And for a long time, that was Asda's position, that they were, everyday low price, every little helps. Pat your back pocket when you leave, that worked, served them very well for a long time. But they are now on the loyalty charabanc to Data Central, and off we go.
You've said something really, really important there, Dan, which is that a retailer could and should probably do that. That there's a lot of power in that, and as we've said, and as Richard and one of our guests has said, that has been that kind of every little bit helps has been taken away. but you've hit on one of the reasons why the concentration on loyalty schemes has a dark side. The ability to do what you've just said, to bring down prices in that way, depends on the mathematics of retailing. And the mathematics of retailing now are, I have a reward card pot. I have a pot of money that I've been able to build up because of my use of data, because of the way that I've managed to persuade suppliers to contribute to the club card or to Nectar. I've got a reward pot that I can now dish benefit out of. We heard a rumor that, for example, Asda did that at Christmas, is that they transferred money out of the reward pot to support much better discounting in the last week. Really sensible in the end. They won market share according to Kantar's numbers in doing that, which is a really good thing. But isn't that the dark side of things, when the accounting of the way that you are paid and the way you pay your suppliers means that there is a pot of money that's only accessible to you if the loyalty scheme exists in the first place? That becomes almost dystopian. It's almost Eric Blair's vision of Orwell's vision of the future of retailing.
Gosh, pregnant pause time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've got two separate thoughts in my head, which is about trying to move us away in the time we have left, slightly away from grocery and supermarkets.
Yeah.
One is just thinking about, there's, because of exactly what you said, Richard, there is a tremendous power in those grocery schemes because of the scale of the grocers, the scale of the turnover, the scale of the influence they have over the deals that they strike with suppliers and how they're structured, which is almost impossible in any other retail environment to replicate. Many other retailers are predominantly own label, so they're not getting that contribution, and they're effectively, any discount is hitting their margins directly, however they choose to manage them. Or others, if we look at different parts of the market, if we go and look at luxury and what loyalty could do in luxury, again, you're not dealing with the volumes, you're not dealing with the same thing. You're dealing with brands, even if you're a department store, you're dealing with brands who are very protective about conserving that price point, and they don't want to discount their product, because the last thing they want is the idea that their products are either on sale or in any way going to be devalued at any point. And so I think there's a real challenge around how somebody at the luxury end of the market can create loyalty in the same way that supermarkets can, because it's not, supermarkets are at the very non-discretionary end of the spectrum of retail, in the sense that I've got to buy food and for sustenance. Whereas I'm in a department store because I enjoy it. Maybe I'm buying something quite functional, but I'm also looking at other things that are entirely discretionary. It's discretionary. What are there any lessons, or is this a completely different ecosystem?
No, there are lessons to learn from it, because again, that point right at the top of the session where we talked about how brands can engender significant loyalty. Well, it turns out, and I've almost got the words, a Mark Ritson column kind of echo in my head here. If you spend I nearly did. If you spend
you did, didn't you? Yeah.
If you spend a lot of money building a brand meticulously, working with the right influencers, working with the right celebrities, working with a great product in the first place, yes, you can certainly build loyalty. And actually, hearing you talk about the right sort of customers, I won't name the brand, but a very high-profile luxury brand came to us last year and said, could your data analytics and your customer experience analytics, could that also help us get rid of customers we don't want? And we realized it could, and we actually have a version of the platform called dark mode. And it doesn't make the platform go dark. It's dark mode is how to shed customers by changing certain types of experiences. But actually that gets against the heart of what loyalty is. Loyalty is driven by my experience and my interaction with a loved one or a brand or a retailer. And, retailers will really struggle to make me feel that I'm positively associated with them in that way. But brands absolutely 100% can. And there's no shortcut to it. But one of the things that there's a question in the chat, and we'll get to Q&A in a bit, obviously, but talking about the influence of digital and online. And there's an argument about saying, well, building loyalty, or the effects you're looking for from loyalty, which is to shift more boxes, to shift more product. Doing that through digital is, can I put the right, most appropriate, most attractive and engaging message in front of the right person more often than not? And there are some fabulous people doing that right now. In my midlife, my crisis has expressed itself as bright trainers, sneakers. Of course it has, pathetic, but whatever it is. I keep buying New Balance new releases from Size, not because I'm particularly loyal to Size, but they hit me at the perfect time. They're whatever they've got driving their CRM, it puts a message in front of me that makes me go, oh, I know CRM. Sorry, I know Size. Quite like the way that they look after me. They're never late. It's what I want. I like that shoe. I can sign up to the thing that means that on the morning of its release, that's how sad it's got, incidentally. On the morning of its release, I can get in there and get my new pair of shoes. To the point where my partner's had to allocate a space in one of our spare bedrooms to accommodate this collection of flipping shoes.
Yes, yes.
Well, there you
go. We did say at the top of one of the questions, one of the points we posed in our clickbait elements that we were trying to make sure that everybody came out of their January torpor and joined us this afternoon was what happens when loyalty goes wrong. And I'm kind of tempted to talk about one example, but actually I might just say presse a manger to you, Richard, because I know that it felt to me as though Pret a Manger last year decided that they were going to put their prices up for everyone unless you paid a subscription fee for coffee. And as a non-coffee drinker, it offended me massively because I might want their breakfast, but I don't want a hot drink. But why am I now penalised because I don't drink coffee? And basically.
Yeah. I mean, there's two aspects to when it goes wrong, isn't there? The first is exactly that. We have an office full of people here in Camden who will not shop the Pret on Camden High Street now for two reasons. One is because exactly that price. We suddenly, as we were reaching for whatever it was, I think it was a little meatball thing. The price was outrageous, and the way it was communicated. And I spoke to Phil Barden about this at the time. Phil's an extraordinary global expert on understanding the framing of a situation and how that affects the customer's response to it. The framing of it was almost you're an idiot if you don't go for that. Anyway, so we took that price down in terms of never shopping it again, and we shop the rivals around. And the second thing that loyalty can do is you get somebody used to something, used to getting a benefit that you then withdraw. That can be calamitous, and that's a real issue.
Mm-hmm. Well, precisely the press example, and we've just got 1 minute, and then I think Meha wants to move to questions. But what happens if the customer loves coffee, loves hot drinks, and absolutely saw the benefit of signing up for the £30 a month, and loves the discounts across all the other food, the 20% off, but then for some reason their circumstances change, they change job, they're not going to use Pret quite so regularly, they cancel their subscription, and they're now suddenly being asked as a more occasional user, but still a fan of the brand and its products and its great quality food and its lovely offering, they're suddenly being asked to pay 20% more for absolutely everything. Yeah. Do you lose that customer for good? I think there's a risk there, isn't there? Anyway, let's move to questions, shall we? Where shall we start? Is Meha going to point us through them?
That was amazing. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we've got you.
We've got you.
Okay. There's a lot of questions. I'm going to start with the two that came in just before the webinar. What role do you all see physical stores playing in driving customer loyalty as part of a wider connected customer experience?
I mean, I'd throw a bit of data into the pot there, first of all, which is that pretty much every retailer we've spoken to in the last 3 years has said that online sales go up in postcodes where they open a new store. So you have a physical store there, online sales also go up. And that tells you something about the reality around that, is that the store is putting the brand in people's minds. It's reminding people to get, because there's this thing I'd mentioned, getting lots of lovely emails and responding to them. But there's not that much that actually stands out like that. It's more about when I sit in front of my browser or my mobile phone, which app am I going to open first? Or whose URL am I going to type in first? That is functionally, it's not loyalty. It's something that I would call first visit advantage, which is, can you use those tools to establish yourself as the first retailer or brand that a customer visits? That's a different thing to loyalty, and that you really can generate through the way that you present yourself and your experience to customers, both digitally and physically, but also, and I'm not going to use the expression that starts with O and ends with ul, because there's no such thing as channels in retail. They're not channels, they're all stores. Your online is a store, your email communication is a store. It's all a bloody store. And the more we recognize that, the more we realize that we trade those channels. Consistency in relationship is really important. But for basic reasons, as a customer, I want to know, oh, that's them. That email or that communication is them.
Yeah.
So that moment of association, and of course, if you have a store that's easy to shop, then your customer is more likely to use it. That drives habit. The other day, I found myself walking to my local Waitrose. I needed some milk. I didn't need anything else, and I found I was at lunchtime and I was in a bit of a hurry, but I'd unconsciously, subconsciously walked past about 4 other shops that would have sold me 4 pints of whole milk. But I found myself walking to Waitrose instead, and honestly, I think my mind was elsewhere and it was habit. That's where I usually go.
I think, yeah, I mean, it's hard to top Richard's data, but what we've seen over the last 5 years, particularly through COVID, was at the start of COVID, I and many other people that we were talking to, many of our clients, thought that what was going to happen is that COVID was going to accelerate the shift to retail functional purchases and transactions online, and that the store would become much more about a brand positioning, a brand experience, and everyone would shift from buying things in store to trying them on and having circuses in shops and all of this fanciful stuff, all these ideas that we were sharing with each other while we were talking like this on cameras, isolating from each other. But that this was going to we would experience 5 years of digital shift in 6 months. All of these big bold kind of predictions, including some of them are mine as well. I was very wrong. And what we actually saw was that people value and enjoy physical experience. People want to be somewhere where they can be with their friends or meet people, or even just have some downtime on their own, browsing, looking, trying, shopping, something that everybody in the 20th century instinctively understood and what all our jobs are about, which is about how to make physical stores work and sell stuff. And all of that holds true. And so actually what we see is that, yes, digital is a convenient shop. It is a convenient place to sell, and people will use it when they're time poor or when it's functional or when it's awkward, or all of those things will add up to very good reasons for buying online. But the majority of purchases are still done in shops and will continue to be.
I'll add one last point to that, and without labouring it. Physical retail will remain the predominant form of the art for at least the next 10 years and possibly forever. And Jack Fitzgerald, one of our guests, has said this exactly. The human hasn't changed very much over thousands of years. When we're first born, the way we experience our environment around us is we put things in our mouth because we can see them, we can feel them. We also want to make a spatial relationship with them. That's still the same when Sarah's wandering around down the high street to go and get some milk. You've gone to Waitrose because in your head it's habit, but there's also, I like some of the other stuff there. And I'll bet you walked away with other stuff then as well.
I did, yes. And tights for the 12-year-old because she keeps putting it.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. That was a great answer. Ian has asked, regarding Waitrose and their more premium offer, do you think there is enough business available for them to be a bloody good Waitrose, keeping to their premium values rather than a poor copy of Aldi? Whoa.
I think there's an imperative. I think it's absolutely imperative, for a moment, if you're a poor copy of Aldi, give up and go home because Aldi are better than you. Whoever you are, you're going to lose. So, the metrics don't make sense for Waitrose to do that. Store estate is all in the wrong position. Supply chain and how they buy and their buying power, none of it works. So no, if they're going to do that, they might as well just shut the shops now and start doing something different. But I don't think that's at all what Waitrose should do. I think Waitrose has still got a huge amount of loyalty. They don't need a huge amount of market share. They bumble around, but sorry, that's not the wrong way of putting it. They have hovered around between 4.5%, 5.5%, 6% of market share. If they can hold on to their 5%, there's enough space for them and Marks and Spencer's with two well-defined offers to both play nicely together in the UK. But Waitrose have, for some reason, and it just makes me despair, have lost their way over the last decade, and all that M&S are doing at the moment is shining a spotlight on quite how behind the pace Waitrose are.
Well, they are, and they're also encroaching on what I would regard as sort of traditional Waitrose territory, i.e. values around farming, husbandry, animals, where the produce comes from, organic credentials, all that sort of thing. M&S has always had that in spades, but it's really bringing it to the fore now. There's that association with Tom Kerridge. I'm sure some people have seen the advertisements and the publicity, and it's really taking the fight to them. And we very much look forward to seeing what will come. I think that's where we're at.
I hope so, yeah.
Waitrose.
I think there's also, we have to look externally as retailers more often than we do. There are ready lessons in marketplaces, not just grocery, in all marketplaces, by looking outside of your own metrics and your own, the boss has given me a shouting out this morning, and the shareholders have given me a shouting out. So you're concentrated and you can't see the wood for the trees. Look at Whole Foods in the US. Introduction of their 365 range, really successful in that you can go to Whole Foods and spend a very small amount of money if you want to on a really good product, packaged in a very jolly way that still has the associative benefit of Whole Foods positioning. Compare that with the way that Waitrose have done Any Day in the UK. Any Day is a little bit soul crushing, because it's like it's not Waitrose. It's not what I'm here for. It's not why I've walked into the store. It doesn't need to be like that. It doesn't need to have that slightly sad feeling to it. And I think one of the saddest experiences I've had in retail in the last 3 years was walking into John Lewis in Oxford and it being dominated by Any Day, where actually I wanted a treat. I wanted to find, there's plenty of places where I could get Any Day, but the way that Whole Foods have integrated it is really powerful. But I'll say one last thing about Waitrose. It's a young leadership team, or a new leadership team there over the last year. And I'm really listening to them. I'm really hopeful that they'll turn that around. In fact, the fact is they clearly know what they need to do, which I really, it's the first big step. So on a positive note, I think there's a chance that they might turn that around.
Well, we wish Waitrose all the best of luck, and let's hope that something fun happens. Chantal has asked, what role or part do you think a retailer's people play in securing and sustaining customer loyalty?
Well, I'd like to go back to Richard, just reference what Jack had written, which is about it being a two-way human connection. It's fundamental, and we know it, and you see it particularly, in the luxury end of the market. People go to certain stores and certain brands because of service, and that loyalty is about that service and that differentiation. And I think we have an issue that retail jobs are not seen as aspirational jobs anymore, which is a real shame, because actually it's a really great it's a great kind of structure for employment and for giving responsibility to people quite young and letting them run with it. And it just there ought to be like the Milk Marketing Board in the 70s, but the retail the kind of I'm sure there is, but it's obviously rubbish, isn't it? But like the retail some kind of retail promotion to really explain what it's about, that it's rewarding, that it's interacting, that it's varied. You may be able to tell that I started off in retail. I did 10 years of retail when I finished at art college before I found my way back to design. But there are lessons that I learned 25 to 30 years ago that I still carry with me today. So I think people are fundamental. Of course you can manage loyalty using AI, using online, using all kinds of technological tools, but human touch is what makes a difference. And it's when every story about something going wrong, and the reason why someone stayed loyal to a brand or experience, is because of the human interaction that turned that thing that had gone wrong around, not because some automated response came out somewhere.
I would also add to that, it doesn't have to just be luxury. I go to Aldi every week to do a shop, and I always have a lovely chat with the person who's hurling groceries at me. And that's after they've checked my bags to make sure I'm not stealing anything. But they're very chatty, they're very friendly. And that's in a very short interaction. And they're not willing to slow it down for me, but we always manage to have a nice chat. So it doesn't even just have to be across luxury.
Yeah, I'm biased to buy a video recorder. and I was 15. So if I worked for Comet for Christmas, I'd get 20% discount. And I just fell in love with it. I had no intention to do it. And we were such a mixed bag of people. We had an alcoholic colleague who, and this was the 80s, his nickname was Smirnoff. We had an art photographer who photographed some of the world's top bands who needed to top up the money. We had students on a break from university who didn't go back to university because they just loved this environment. That's what I do. Retail, without doing an advert for retail is the most egalitarian, merit-driven form of retail form of employment on the planet. It's you can start as anybody there and you can become anything you want to be. But there are three examples that answer your question very directly. Best Buy, Currys, and Halfords. All three of those businesses went against the prevailing trend to cut staff. Matt Davis at Halfords is probably the best example of that. He was told to save money in Halfords. He was told to reduce the cost. And instead, he doubled the amount that they were spending on physical staff in stores because he knew that customers who were helped to leave the store with the right thing would then want to come back and experience that again. It's the data, the data of the experience drove it. Incredibly successful. The most successful Halfords have been in the last 20 years was during his tenure. No coincidence that Tesco's then poached him to run retail in the UK. But Best Buy and Currys both did the same thing, massive investments in people, and it enabled both those businesses. Best Buy should have gone bust in the US. It should have, by rights, disappeared during that brief period of adoption where electricals moved online. Best Buy is one of the reasons why we can still go and look at something first. We can still go and get some advice. We can still look and feel in the consumer electronics area. And Currys, those numbers they've just put in their trading update are phenomenal. Think of the economic year we've had. Did Currys cut to the bone? Nope. They doubled down on their strategy to invest in people at the cutting edge. And you could argue that Currys, if they wanted to, could say, we now dominate the market. We are the most physical stores of anybody. We can ease off a little bit now and take the mickey. They don't, because they know, again, from the data has driven it, that investment has made a giant difference. Currys, and consumer electronics was my area, Currys 20 years ago, 30 years ago, had an awful reputation for the way that people dealt with customers. Not anymore. Not anymore. It's massively impressive. And there are loads more besides.
Wonderful. Okay, we have time for a couple more. So Ben has asked, what about online? Does service and punctuality play a part in loyalty? I think you guys have covered this quite a bit.
It plays a part in preference. It's not loyalty. As soon as that retailer, if the only thing that retailer is offering is quick and easy, the first time they mess that up, they lose that customer to somebody else that can deliver. If that online retailer gives quick and easy, but something special. My partner loves a company called Carrier Company, which is a little business in Norfolk, beautiful, timeless clothing, and they are really slow. And, it's just one of those things. But they're lovely. The product is beautiful. The people are great. The story they project in their website is the narrative is phenomenal. I just go and order early for Emily's birthday to get her stuff from Carrier Company, knowing I can't get it quick and convenient.
Okay, and then speaking of convenience, our last question from Joel, sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly, would like to hear your insights about loyalty in the convenience channel, not associated with petrol forecourts.
Great. Well, again, if you don't mind me jumping in, because this is one of my hobby horses, you'll often hear retail execs in particular say, no, convenience is just about location and we can do what we want. And you look at the success of the Co-op. When the Co-op do their job really well, which has been inconsistent over time, and that you can see their market share data kind of goes along that. But at its best, when it says, let's make this a place that, yes, it might cost you a little bit more because we are having to distribute in a different way than those alternatives. And actually, if you need that milk right now, then I'm going to charge you a premium for it, or that laundry, whatever. It's not just that you can get something from me quickly and easily. It's that you can also get something from me that you like, that tastes nice, that performs its function well, that meets my human needs. And it's not just me saying that. It's one of the things we do when we analyze customer experiences. We look at it by overlaying lots of different types of people trying to do different things, people in different moods when they try to do those different things, and often with big contexts like economic contexts or COVID context, for example. And when you do that, you can see that price drops down. It really does. And what we're calling it loyalty, but again, I'd say first visit preference, my choice to go into that place. Or first visit preference is as simple as I'll get on the bus that goes the route that goes to that place, or I'll park my car at this end of the mall instead of that mall, or I'll open their URL or their app first because I know it's broadly reliable. That first visit advantage, you get that not just from being the lowest price or the most convenient, you get it from meeting the human need. It's that, if it was different from that, if it was just convenience, everybody would buy their lunch from exactly the same place. The quickest, cheapest option.
Yeah.
The nearest, the nearest, cheapest option.
Yeah.
But we don't, because there's more than that at play.
Brilliant. Okay, I think we should wrap it up now, Meha. It's been a fantastic first session.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Richard. Been an absolute star. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next month. If you would like to catch this, I'll be sending out a link in the coming weeks. You can also catch us on our podcast on Google and Amazon and Spotify, and the video will be on YouTube hopefully next week. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye
Bye-bye.
for now.